Welcome back to the third part in this series, which will be focusing on creating a simple layout using HTML and CSS in Dreamweaver to create a page that looks like this over here. We've already started with the basic structure. We've added some typography through Google Fonts to make our global values already those are taken out of the way so we can focus on more detailed work. We've started playing around with some of the layout elements, for example, the sidebar. Let me just get that out of the way. So yeah, see the sidebar over here in the graphic, we're going to have to reproduce, so we need to make some space in the document for it, as well as the content on the left. Right now we're going to focus, this particular video is going to focus on creating the navigation bar. So it really pays off to do some planning up ahead and studying the document before diving in. So what we're trying to accomplish here is a container which has a thin black border. Okay, that's not hard to do with CSS. It has a series of links inside here, which when we hover over them turn orange. So let's approach this logically. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links. So we need at least 2 more here. Let's look at the code and understand what's happening. Now, from previous assignments, we know that creating a navigation bar like this is really just taking a list and making a few modifications in CSS in order to style it this way. We already have our list somewhat structured over here. If we look at the source code for it, there it is. And let's see if I can zoom in a bit so you guys can see better. It pays off to look at how everything is structured. So we have our logo container, the logo box that's up here. That's already taken care of. And next in our list is the navigation. So we have our nav tag that encloses this entire list, and it has a class of primary nav. So already we have a container that we can format, and it's the outermost container, so it's relatively easy to control. And then we have our unordered list in here, with which also has been assigned a class. And the reason we want to do that is if we have a list further down on our page, it won't interfere. The styling won't, there won't be a conflict in the styling. If we had redefined only the tag in our CSS, then every list we make would end up looking like a navigation bar. That's not something we want. By assigning a class to it, though, it gives us the option of assigning a specific style to it. So here's the beginning of our unordered list, and now we have our list items. Okay, this list item also has a class assigned to it, and because it's a class, we can assign it to multiple items, and that's why all of these have the same class. The logic behind that is if you create one button and you style it the way you like, then any subsequent buttons you add to this navigation bar should have the same style. So if you reference them using the same class, they'll pick up those attributes. Now, in between here, this is just placeholder text, which we're going to replace. And we see that we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 list items, although our document calls for 7. So what I'm going to do is add a couple of more over here, and I'll just keep it simple. I'm just going to copy paste. If you want, you could do it here in visual mode. You could just double click. I believe you can press enter. There you go. You got another list item. Nav item, and press enter again. Nav item. So the first thing we want to do is rename these so that at least the ordering and the name will make more sense once we start playing around with them. So I'm working in live mode. You may want to switch to design mode. It might make it a bit easier to work with this text rather than double clicking everywhere. And of course, you're always invited to go into the source code and just make the changes here. Really, again, don't forget Dreamweaver is just like training wheels. If you feel you could be more efficient working with the code, then just dive right in and go nuts. I might do a bit of both. So I'll start here. My first link was home. What's my reference document say about the other links? So home, the next one should be food, then travel and leisure. Travel, oops, and leisure. We had showbiz, sports, automotive, and fashion. Showbiz, sports, automotive, and fashion. Oops. So now it's starting to look a bit more realistic, even though it still looks pretty ugly. The next thing we want to do is put some hooks on these little words here, because they're going to be links. Eventually these, you're going to be able to click on them and they'll take you to a specific place. Right now we don't have those pages ready, and they probably never will be ready for the purposes of this exercise, but we still want to create links here. What do we do so that we can create temporary links that won't give us an error every time we click on them? There's a little trick that we can use, and it involves select your text and then go down here into your properties bar. If you don't see that properties bar, then you can activate it by going to Window Properties here at the top. And once you activate it and select your text, you'll be able to go down here and select from any one of these items to specifically the link. So you can add a link to this text very easily by just inserting a little hashtag or number sign or ampersand, a number sign, yeah. So this symbol will allow you to create a link. See, it created that link right over there, ahref. The link goes to nowhere, basically. It's just a number sign. And it looks and acts like a link normally would, except that it doesn't go anywhere, but your browser doesn't give you an error if you're testing. So let's proceed and do that with everything. I think if you select all 6 of them, and now go back here and assign a link like this with your little hashtag and press enter, Dreamweaver is smart enough to understand that these are individual links. So it's not going to make one link for all of them, it'll assign the individual links to each one of these elements. So that's a huge time saver and saves you from a lot of typing. So there we go, we have our links. If you go to live view, you can see them a bit more clearly, and you can see that now if you hover over them, they actually act like links, but if you click on them, nothing really happens. So that's exactly what we want. So now we have our primary nav that's outside, we have our nav bar, then we have our nav item, and in our nav items we now have links. So we have at least 4 or 5 different elements that we can target for styling. The first thing we want to do, zoom out a bit here, is start by going to the nav item is not broad enough. We want to go to the nav bar itself. Now remember, nav bar is our unordered list right there. So there are a couple of things we want to start with at the global level with our unordered list over here. So let's look at the code ul class equals navbar. I want to make sure here in my CSS designer I have navbar selected, because now we're affecting the ul portion of the list. What we want to do is reset certain things that the browser does. Now if you notice, a standard list is indented a little bit and it has these bullets. So we want to eliminate that formatting so that we have a bit more control. So what we'll do here in CSS Designer is click this area here to activate it. If you click this center link icon, you'll see that it links up all these different values from top, right, bottom, and left. And if we set one of them, for example, to 0, they all get assigned the same value. So we've removed all the margins that were there previously. Same thing with the padding. Click here to make sure all these values are linked together. We want a value of 0. And look what happens to your navigation bar. There you go. Suddenly, we don't have any padding on the left, so it lines up exactly where we want, which is basically at the 0 point. We still have these pesky little bullets to contend with. So what we'll do is we'll scroll a bit further down to our list areas over here. We're looking for list style type over here in CSS Designer. And if you just click once in the little container, you'll be presented with a series of options that are available. So we want to hide these bullets. So I'm going to click on None. And there they go, gone. Now let's take a quick look and see what's happening in our styles.css. While we're doing all this in Dreamweaver, using our CSS Designer, Dreamweaver is taking care of creating all the CSS for this. So if we look at what's going on, we have our nav bar. It's adding the margins that we assigned, the padding all set to 0, and we said list style type is none. And there we go. We're off to a good start. You might also want to assign a background color at this point, just so you can visualize where this container is. And it's a temporary placeholder. We'll just put background color, and you see again, Dreamweaver is helpful in that once you start typing, it gives you a list of options. Double click, and now you can choose from the tool here, and find something that'll stand out without being too loud. Press enter, and it'll put in the appropriate code. So let's switch back to our starter page.html. And there you go, that value has been assigned. So now that we can at least visualize what this container is and where it's placed on our document. So we've taken care of that part. Next, we're going to go one level in after the UL has been tackled. Now we're going to tackle the list items. Now there's not much to do here, but what we want to do is instead of having this vertical list showing up like this, we want the list to be horizontal. There's really only one thing to do here. Identify the class, that's nav item. We'll find it here in our CSS Designer. And what we want to do is set it to inline. So if we go to display, we want to override the default vertical and click here once to get a list of items and just select inline from the list. So by selecting inline, boom, there it is. It puts everything in a horizontal position. Now it looks like a mess because everything's squished together, but the next step will be for us to tackle the next element in that list, which is the links themselves. So here's where it gets a little tricky. Select one of these links, whether it's here in design view or live view or in your code. But basically, you can select things like this by just positioning your cursor, and then you'll notice down here, zoom in a bit, there's always this little path that you can follow, and it starts starting from the body tag and works its way in. So if you select the A, you'll notice that it's basically our unordered list with a class of navbar, list item, nav item. Our A over here allows us to select that particular tag in its entirety without leaving out any parts. So what we want to do there is now we want to create a new class for this because it doesn't exist yet. And basically what it's going to be is it's going to be the nav item with an A. So we're targeting all the links in nav item. Click on the little plus, and you'll see here the CSS designer automatically knows which class to create. And you can use, if you'll notice, the arrow keys up or down to make the selector less or more specific. For me, this is a bit too specific, but if I go up one, it's, you know, nav item and targeting the A's in the nav item. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to click enter here. And now I've created this new entry that allows me to target these links in my list. So with that selected, I can now have some fun. I can now say, okay, well, first things first, I want to space these out a bit. Okay, so I'm going to choose 25 pixels on the left. And you see right away on the left hand side it automatically applies all these spaces. And you can maybe bump that number up to 50. There you go, spreads them out nicely. We can change these values at any time. But, you know, I also want to add a bit of padding top and bottom to, you know, not have these boxes be so narrow. I'm going to choose maybe 20 padding over here. 20 at the bottom. And you know what? We're going to split this 50 on left and right. So we're going to say 25 px on the left and 25 px on the right. So what we're looking at in this box here is really one of these links. And if it was here in the middle, what would this box look like? So by adding padding, we're adding space around here. And you'll see in the next step what that means. So there we go. So what's going on here is we have 25 pixels of cushioning over here on the top and the bottom. We don't see it yet, but if we assign a background color, scroll down, scroll down. So background color, I'm just going to randomly choose something so that we can see it. We'll go with a nice light blue, press enter. There you go. So now you can see there's space all around these links. Now there's a lot of interference in the way, you know, our navigation height is off, the image is now encroaching up into our navigation space. These are all things that require a bit of fine-tuning now, and this is where we start playing around with our elements. The heavy lifting is done. We have a functional navigation system here. The structure is okay, but now it's time for us to clean things up. I'm going to start back, you know, nav class primary nav. That's our big container that holds everything together. So let's go to that. Primary nav is here. Let's set up some elements. So height, let's give it a height that is probably more than we need. Let's say 50 px. There you go. So you can see now that we have 50. You know what? We could probably bump that up to 75. There you go. Don't worry if your elements are a bit off or skewed or, you know, not centered properly. We're going to get there. So right now what we did by adding height to our primary nav container here is that we've created this that box right there that holds everything together. So next we're going to target the still working on primary nav. It's probably a good opportunity right now to get those thin black lines in there, right? Because if we look at our mockup, we can see that our navigation bar has these two thin lines. So that's a great place to assign some borders. There we go. Back to my CSS designer over here. Primary nav selected. I'm going to scroll down to my borders and I'm going to say width 1 pixel. Oh, but wait, do I want to assign it all around or do I want to assign it only to the top and the bottom? If I look at my my mockup, I'll see that it's only the top and bottom. So let's confirm. Yeah, top and bottom, we don't really see it on the left. So little details sometimes, you know. So to do that, we'll choose only the top. We'll say a value of 1 pixel, style solid. You can just click once over here, solid right there. And color, well, they're going to be black. So click there, enter. And now we'll do the bottom one. So click the next tab over. Width 1 pixel, which is the same as thin, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to be precise. Style is solid, and color again is black. Enter, and there you go. So now we have our thin black lines, top and bottom, gone. That's out of the way. Next, we want to maybe include, you know, a way to push this downwards, because right now our text, you know, if we look at this container over here that we just created, well, that we just modified, it's like a series of text in here, and because it's a line of text, it's right at the top. So we want to push that downward. Let's go to our padding, and at the top of this, we're going to maybe add a value of 25 pixels. And let's see what that does. Oops. There you go. So what we've done is we've created some padding here at the top, which pushes down the actual text, meaning that the boxes that contain it also get pushed down with it. It might be a bit too much. Maybe we want to take it down to like 23. And what we're aiming for is to get the edge of the blue box over here to line up with the top of the thin black line. So I'll play around with those values a little bit. You know, you can use your arrow keys to go up and down. There you go. But now I see that my box is too tall because this thin black line down here is way too far away. So I'm going to reduce the actual height of this box now to, let's say, 50 pixels and see what happens. Oh, still a bit more. We can bring it down to 48. There we go. You can use your arrow key and just incrementally make it smaller. There we go. We're almost there. And there we go. We got pixel perfection. So there it is. You know, we have our containers, and again, you can play around with the padding of the nav item. If you feel there's too much space on the top or not enough left and right, like right now, what I would do is probably bump up the space on my nav item A, this business over here, to, let's say, 35 px. So there you go. I've added a bit of extra space there, and 35 on the right. There you go. We're almost there. So this little light green box in the background, which we had assigned, I believe it was the nav bar was assigned that color. Was it? Background, yeah. See, now we can delete that because we have our bearings. We don't need that reference anymore. So if you ever want to delete a value from the CSS designer, just hover over that area and you can see the little trash can icon. If you're not sure, if you want to leave it in there but want to deactivate it, you just turn on this little, you just click the little sign over here, a symbol, and it deactivates it, but it keeps it grayed out. So if you really want to trash it, just click the can over here and it's gone. So we have a somewhat functional navigation bar over here. We're going to go one step further now and fine-tune it a bit more. Now I noticed in the mock-up, oh, the text is all uppercase. Bummer. So let me fix that real quick. And yes, through the magic of editing, they're suddenly all uppercase. I noticed though that once I did that, my navigation bar broke because uppercase letters take up more space. If that happens to you, what you might need to do is tweak some settings. Now again, nav item A, I want to target those elements, and change some of the horizontal values. So I think I might bring it back down to 30 here, 30 px, and 30 px over here. Let's see if that does the trick. Ooh, almost. So it's a question of about 15 pixels there. I'm going to probably bring it down to about 25. Might be too much. Let's see, 30, so 28, and 28. Values might be different on your end. Play around with them until it makes sense. That's good enough. Now I'm going to continue modifying this so that it matches the mockup as much as possible. First things first, I want to get rid of the underline here. So CSS Designer again, you scroll down, you go to Text Decoration, click on None, and this will eliminate all the navigation underlines. Now remember, you always need to have the proper class selected when you're doing this stuff, otherwise you're in trouble. The next thing you want to do is disable the background color, because in our mockup it's just white navigation, but the orange only activates when we hover over it. So we're almost there. We're going to remove the background color. There it is. Let's trash that. And we want to change the actual color of the link so that it's not the default blue. For that, we would go to the text area, find our color. Let's just make it a nice middle gray. And there it is. We can also choose font weight bold. Let's see if that works. Does that match our mockup? Might not be necessary. Not necessary. So let's turn that off. And the next thing we can probably do is what? What else do we need here? I think we're done. I think we're done with part 1. Always remember to save your work. It should go without saying, but I'll mention it now because it's a good point to save. And also save your CSS file. So save all the files that are open. And seeing as we're on our CSS file here, let's take a quick look and see what's cooking in the code. So we have our primary nav. We assign the height here, border top, border bottom. Padding top was used so that we can push down our links and they're not floating outside of the box and they're more centered in that container. Now if you go ahead and change, for example, your padding on the top and the bottom for your link items, you're going to have to change some of these values as well. So keep that in mind. For now, we're okay. Nav bar, there it is. We got our margins and our padding removed. We have our list style type set to none, so no bullets. Our nav items are displaying in line, and our links, basically, we have our spacing so that they're centered within these nice boxes. We've removed our underlines, and we've assigned them a color. Now, how do we get the hover? The hover is basically what's called a pseudo class. And I'm going to skip the CSS designer for this one because it's so much easier to just do it in the code. What we're going to do is copy this particular class, make some space right beneath it, press paste, and a pseudo class is almost like a secondary state of an existing class. And you see what I did is I typed the same class, but then I added colon hover. No spaces or anything, it's all like one piece. And what this does is it creates the optional state. So I'll add my little curly bracket there. And now I say, okay, I want my background color to be orange when somebody moves their mouse over that. So let me just move that out of the way. Background color orange, that's the only thing I want to change. So that's all it does. So when I hover my mouse over this nav item, the background will switch to orange. So let's see what that looks like. I'll do a little save here while we're at it. Starter page. Now if I move my mouse over it, switch to live view if you want to see what that does. Go to home, food, travel, leisure, there it is. Nice, nice. If I look at my mockup one more time though, I'll notice that it also makes the text white when I hover. So to do that, again, switch to your styles.css, go to the hover pseudo class, and we're going to add color white, which will paint our text white whenever the mouse goes over this button. Oh, look at that. Sweet. There you go. So we got our navigation done, out of the way. We can tweak the values a bit more just to make sure that it's flush and we got every pixel accounted for. But for now, it's fine. We have a functional navigation bar. Don't lose any sleep over it. We'll do a little sweep at the end, cleaning up all the little details. But for now, congratulations, you have a functional nav bar. If you missed any parts here, rewind, go back, play it over again. And again, there are more ways than what I just demonstrated to do this. You can go straight into the code and basically assign all these values manually. You can jump back and forth, etc., etc. So don't be limited by what you're seeing in this tutorial. You feel free to jump in and do things your way, as long as you understand the fundamental concepts of how the containers work and the classes are assigned and how you're affecting individual elements in the list to create that navigation bar. Tune in for the next step in this, which is going to be, adding some color to this, the background, and we're going to open up Photoshop to grab the elements we need for our images here and for our stories. So we're going to take a little break from the code and start playing around with some pretty pictures. So that'll be part 4. Check back in soon and we'll have some more fun.